is an empty pipeline. And the reason that people have empty pipelines is that they're not prospecting every day, every day, every day, every day.
To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
Like, this was the first book that I ever read of yours. And it's inked the negotiation tactics that unlock and seal the deal. And I can tell you, right from the intro, it hit me so hard because I started laughing, because for the first 7 years of my career, my negotiation was, oh, is the price too high? Okay, I'll drop it $100. And it was like, all of us in this industry, that's what it was. And then I started to read and I was like, oh my gosh. And that's when I reached out to Andrea and then found out you had a new book coming, and that's how this all happened. But Ryan is a big fan of your work. Jeff is a big fan of your work. So I'm dying to jump into this. So I'm going to ask the boys, which one of you want to start with the first question? Because I know we all got a list of questions to ask. So.
Well, this whole concept of working from home or working in an office, if I go all the way back to 1995, so it's a long time ago, I worked in an organization where all the salespeople worked from home, and we were a field sales organization. You had to go out and knock on doors and call on people. You had to run phone blocks. You had to do prospecting, and we had an office. There was a place where people went to work, but we just didn't work there. We met there, but we worked from home because, as a sales professional, especially a field sales professional, you aren't really making any money if you're in an office. So now, if you're an inside salesperson, so if you're a person who you only work on the phone, so the only place you ever talk to a customer is on the phone, a little bit different. So let's just take each of those. If you're a field salesperson, part of that motivation's got to come from yourself. So for me, when I was in the field, when I was in my car, I was listening to podcasts, and at that time I was listening to Zig Ziglar on cassette tapes, because that's how far back that was. But I listened to, all of the great, motivators, sales gurus. I had their tapes. And when I was in my car, the only thing that was playing over the speakers was something that was good for me. And in today's world, same thing, except for, like, you can go to Audible and listen to Fanatical Prospecting. And a lot of people do. They listen to Fanatical Prospecting over and over and over again, or jump on your favorite YouTube channel. But you want to make sure that you're filling yourself up with goodness, and don't look outside of that. Don't look for anyone else to motivate you. Don't look for anything else to motivate you. You got to make that happen. And along with that, you need to have a set of goals, because a lot of what we do in sales is difficult. It's hard. There's nothing that's easy about the grind. So you got to know why you're doing it. And for most salespeople, that means I got to have something in the future that I want, that I'm doing this for. And I can think about that instead of thinking about the fact that I just got kicked out of somebody's building for walking in. Now, if you're an inside sales rep, that's a little bit different, because in a lot of cases, inside salespeople got kicked out of offices and now they're working from home. So all day long, you're talking to your customers, and you were used to being with a group of people. You motivated each other, you elbowed each other. There was that whole, the camaraderie. And we're hearing from some of our clients that kicked the salespeople out, the inside salespeople out, that they're seeing, especially some of the veterans, are starting to lose that connection. So part of this message is to the leaders of those organizations. You need to get your people back in from time to time and get them all together and have that fun with them, or hop on in the morning, hop on a Teams or a Zoom call with everybody, get everybody, like, smack talking each other, and have fun with the day. But if you're the inside sales rep and you're working from home, I go back to the same thing. You got to know why you're doing it. So make sure you got a good set of goals. Make sure that you're setting aside time for your own personal development. So if I were you, I'm waking up in the morning and I'm reading something that motivates me. I do that now. I've got a book that I'm reading right now on my phone, and I take 30 minutes and I read it. I get fired up. It makes me feel good. So I'm constantly putting things back in that fill me up. And to some extent, as a, as an inside salesperson, when you do get in your car and you go places, same thing. Make sure that whatever's playing over the speakers in your car are things that make you feel good, but also educate you and put some of the pieces back that are taken away from you all day long when you're having conversations with customers. But it is difficult for reps who only work with customers on the phone, because you don't get that normal, I don't know what you would call it, but that human interaction that you would typically get if you were out in the field. So you want to make sure that you are taking breaks during your day, that you are giving yourself the opportunity to remotivate yourself. And if you're a leader, you can't lose touch with those folks. You've got to keep that camaraderie going. But if you're a field level salesperson, you've got to find it from within, because you're not going to get it anywhere else.
I love everything you said, especially the automobile university part with Zig
Yes.
Ziglar. I don't think I've ever had the radio or music playing in my car
Yeah.
up until recently. I put some music on my phone, like just some songs that jazz me up. But before that, it was all Zig Ziglar, Ed Foreman, the old school guys that would
Yep.
just pump you up. And you go to work. I had an hour and a half drive to work and an hour and a half drive home. And the
Yep.
amount of content I would consume on the way home. And I love the fact that when you're driving, there's certain parts of the conversation that just infiltrate your head.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, that's a great point. But you might not, you might hear it, but you don't digest it for 10 minutes. And then that one piece is like, oh, that's a golden idea. And you
Yeah.
implement it into your business right away. I love the way that happens when you listen to stuff in the car.
Absolutely. I can't remember a time when I had something in my car playing that wasn't something good for me. Yeah, and maybe the exception right now is that I last night I was coming in from the airport, and I've got a 2-hour drive from the Atlanta airport to home, and I listened to Christmas music the entire time, and I sang at the top of my lungs. It was fun.
But that's jazzing too, though. That's good
Yeah.
for you. That's
That's
good for
probably
you.
one of my
That's
biggest
good for you.
misconceptions, Jeb, because I took you for a Taylor Swift fan. I thought you'd be
I
the
am a
rock
Taylor
guy.
Swift fan.
Okay,
I
there
am a
we go.
dude, I am a
Oh,
total
Swiftie.
Swiftie. I love me some Taylor Swift. So I true, I've gone to Taylor Swift concerts, and I have sat in a row full of teenage girls singing at the top of my lungs with my wife sitting next to me doing this. Oh, you are embarrassing me. Uh,
That is funny. I have a big question for you. When crises come, you know, I see reps more looking towards the apps and what can I do to, can I do something on my, can I get two screens to make myself more productive? Can I, and in your book, Selling in Crisis, you talk about, guys, forget the apps, old school. Go back to the basics, because the basics are what always work. Forget the latest and greatest app that comes out that's supposed to do this or supposed to do that. Can you dive into that a little bit for us, Jeb?
well, it's straight up exactly what you said. Boring works. So the when you start moving into, and we're, right now we're in a weird time. It's we just call it volatility. It's strange because there are some sectors of the economy that are really tanking, and there are others that are holding strong and doing well. The one thing that we know is winter's coming. It's coming for everybody. There's consensus pretty much at the top of all of the major corporations, the CEOs, that we are heading for a recession. What we don't know is how hard it's going to be, and if we're going to soft land or going to hard land. We don't know yet. But in this situation, what happens is that buyers become more risk averse. Companies begin to tighten up their processes and systems. So where people were throwing money at you 4 months ago, now they're saying, you know what, we need to have a conversation about that internally. I just
Mhm.
did that on Thursday. One of my account managers called me and wanted to add on something for security on our network. And I said, I would have probably said yes to you about a couple of months ago, but we've implemented some internal systems in our organization, and I need to go sit down with my CFO and walk through this. I'm not saying no to you, but I'm saying I'm going to have to go through those systems because we're not going to be adding any incremental cost. So if I put this in, we have to make a decision that something else has to go. So
Mhm.
we've slowed things down. And to this cat's credit, he picked up the phone and called me about that. Whereas most salespeople aren't even calling me; they're just sending me emails, and all of those are getting deleted. So he went old school, picked up the phone, walked me through it. I agree with him. I believe that that what he's asking me to do, I trust him on it, is the right thing to do. But even then, where I would have said yes before, it's not that big of a cost. Now we're saying no incremental cost. So in this space where we've got all of these weird things happening, and companies and buyers are beginning to slow down, they're beginning to ask deeper questions, they're beginning to say no to some things. What you've got to start focusing on is getting better at selling. And an app isn't going to help you get there. What's going to help you get there is learning to have real conversations with human beings. What's going to get you there is to get better at the sales process and executing the sales process from prospecting all the way through to the negotiation. What's going to get you there is listening, is asking great questions. It's crafting your messages so that you're being relevant to the people that you're having conversations with. It's the ability to build a business case that connects with your buyer both emotionally and personally, and at the same time delivers measurable business outcomes that you can get your calculator out and you can actually show them, here's the ROI for making this decision. You got to get good at those things. And Warren Buffett was famous for saying that it's only when the tide goes out that we get to see who's been swimming naked. And that's what I mean by getting back to the basics and fundamentals. You need to put your swimsuit on, because right now there's a whole lot of salespeople who have been swimming naked. And the reason is because it's been easy. Like, selling has been easy. It's been crazy easy. And if you think about, transportation and logistics in particular, it's just been order taken. I mean, there's really nobody's been really selling anything. It's just been as fast as you can, take the order, bring it in, sell at the highest price you can, and people are knocking your door down. You haven't had to work. Guess what, folks? Winter is coming. Things are a changing, and as you start moving into 2023, you're going to have to start working, and that's going to be tough for a lot of salespeople. And it's human nature, by the way, Dan, to start looking for easy. Let me find an app, instead of looking internally and saying, you know what, I have had it pretty good. I mean, seriously, in this sector, if you showed up and fogged a mirror, you were probably going to be successful. So right now, you got to get back to the basics and fundamentals, because it's going to change. And suddenly we're just going to have to get back to selling the right way. And those cycles are always happening in our world. And I wouldn't wait until you wake up with an empty pipeline and an empty bank account to figure this out.
Mhm. Yeah, deals are going to take a little longer to go through, so make sure you fill your pipeline up real good with qualified customers, and some will pop. And it's interesting that you said at the beginning industries, because some industries are going to boom. It's kind of like when COVID hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had
Yep.
a customer I was working with that did a bunch of paper, and they had record months while
Mm-hmm.
other
Mm-hmm.
companies were about to go bankrupt.
Yep.
Like record months. Salespeople were making 60, 80, 90 grand a month. And he's like, this is crazy. I don't know where it's coming from. And I'm like, just feet on the
Yep.
ground, run the business, because it's during different times. I mean, listen,
Mm-hmm.
how many of us would have liked to have purchased stock in Zoom when they were 63 cents a stock just before
Yeah.
COVID, and then shot up to $6.57, right? There's
Yes.
always ways to make a lot of money and serve a lot of people in times that we're going into, and in times like
Yeah.
COVID. But you're right, it is industry specific,
Yeah.
and that's a
Money's always
conversation with
moving.
your customer. Yeah,
Money's
100%.
always moving. And that's, that's why salespeople need to, especially in, as you start thinking about how these different sectors move, sales professionals need to pay attention to Willie Sutton and Sutton's law, which says, go where the money is. So if you focus where the money is, you're going to be better up, but that also requires you to be better. When people are throwing money at you, you don't have to go look for it, but now you got to go find it. You have to shift your strategy. You have to think a little bit different about your tactics. You got to sit back down and think, what are the customers that I want to work with? Who are the ones that are going to make us money? Who are the ones who are going to be most profitable? And where do I find them? And oh, by the way, what messaging is going to get their attention? But as the pie begins to shrink, and it's going to shrink, more sellers are going to be going after fewer buyers. That's why you got to get back to the basics and fundamentals, because when there are more sellers and fewer buyers, the sellers who are at the top of their game, they're going to take most of the money off the table. The sellers that are mediocre, who didn't make the change, who were still looking for easy street, those are the ones that either going to be out, they're going to be gone, they won't be in the industry anymore, or they're going to be scraping by, just barely making a living.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm.
So,
Love it.
I'd love to go to Jeff. Jeff, you got anything for our buddy Jeb here?
Yeah, I mean, on the operational side, I always work from the inside out. They start shrinking. They start laying off people. They don't like to take those risks as they would normally do. Going out to service providers that they haven't worked with. They would rather work with the service providers that they currently have on hand because they know how they operate. They know what they do, and they would rather expand with them. So it's kind of hard opening up that door, being a new service provider, especially at this time, to try to gain extra business. It won't happen right away. I mean, you're talking at least 2, 3, 4, 5 months out before you even start getting that extra income in. So if you do have those customers, at least the way I look at it, and you're working with them, exploit them, find out their vendors, find out who their manufacturers are, because every spider has legs. And I say it all the time: work that customer, work it upstream, get those recommendations and start firing off that way. There's always a way. I hate to say the term, but there's many ways to skin a cat. And that's one of them when you really look at it, to try to keep that pipeline fulfilled.
absolutely. I was telling a story on Thursday to a group of sales reps about a, a client that I went into, as a prospect that I went into. And one of the things that I noticed inside their plant was that they had like these really amazing conveyor belts that were moving product all through the plant. And I was on a tour and I asked the contact, like, those things are cool. Where do you get those? And he goes, it's a place right up the road. And I said, could you make an introduction? And he goes, yeah. And I went over and sold the deal that day. So you've got to be thinking always. You got to be open, asking, looking. And that's what I mean, though. When it's been easy, the salespeople haven't been looking. You haven't been aware. You haven't had to really, like you said, work the spider legs out and find all of the opportunities, because it was all coming to you. And if you don't begin to change and switch the way that you are prospecting and your awareness, especially around your existing customers, on who all their vendors are, and then ask for those referrals upstream. If you don't do that, then you're just hurting yourself. And if you haven't had to do it in a long time, you've lost the habit of doing that. That's why now is a good time to go look in the mirror and like just get right with reality. Hey, I've not been doing sales at a professional level because it's been easy. Now let me go back to you. You might not think it's been easy, but it's been easy. Now you got to go back and do it at a professional level, and you got to turn over every rock, every stone, everywhere, every how. You got to be absolutely fanatical about it, because there is money out there, but you got to go find it.
Yep, it's what they
Mhm.
call it's what I call the hidden bank opportunities that exist. All you have to do is lift that rock, and they're right there for the
Yep.
taking. The problem is that, well, it's not a problem. The best kind of reference is a current reference. If you're knocking it out of the ballpark with a current client, who else better can recommend you to another vendor that you're doing business on the procurement side, manufacturing, whatever it might be? I mean, it's a great lead. Go with it. Keep on working that until it's exhausted, the way I look at it.
Now,
I
would you
think
not also think that the like, if you look at Jeb's example, where he talked about the conveyor belt, the guy made the introduction, would that account not become low hanging fruit? Well, you because it would be an easier grab than
Sure.
going into a company you had no idea. So I think the low hanging fruit change when the industry drops and when things are bad? Like, your low hanging fruit now becomes your spider legs from your present customers that love you, as
yeah,
opposed to
there's
trying to
there's
go
gonna be
into
yeah,
new industries.
there's gonna be a lot less low hanging fruit. I mean, you're not gonna shake a tree and the stuff's gonna come out. That was just a matter of when I'm especially when I'm with, in manufacturing is a great example, but when I'm in manufacturing, there's so many different vendors that service a plant. And if you've got a relationship with them, why not ask, like, hey, who's your contact over there? Sometimes it's not the person that you're dealing with. You got to get a referral to someone else in the organization that can connect you with them. But why not go have a conversation with them about what they're doing? At the moment, maybe there's not an opportunity at all, but there may be. But I, I think more than saying it's low hanging fruit, it's much more of, I I probably would have prospected to them anyway if I was working that city. If I knew all of the prospects in the city that could have to potentially use my services, I might go there, but it's a lot easier if you get an introduction because
Oh yeah.
then the person's waiting for you. I
Yeah.
was
Right.
uh I was up in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I was with one of our customers, and I had an opportunity to meet their CEO. We'd never met before, and we're having a conversation, and he says, I got a friend of mine that could use you. Just like that. And I said, awesome. And he gave me the name of the company, started writing it down on a piece of paper, gave me all the information. And I said, hey, could you do me a favor and just call them and let them know that I'm gonna be calling them? And he went, okay. And so he
Sure.
picks up the phone and puts it on speaker. Says, I'm here with Jeb Blount. He's our training guru. And I think you should talk to him. I told him to give you a call. I said, hey, how you doing? He said, sure, call me this afternoon and we'll set up a meeting. But you got to have the initiative to and be intentional about saying, could you make the introduction? And
Mhm.
sometimes they'll say no, and that's because and salespeople are afraid of that. Like they're afraid that I'm going to get rejected in the moment. Sometimes they'll say, "Here, I'll just give you the information. You do the rest of the work." But either way, at least I got to start. But you don't get if you don't ask.
Correct.
So
100%.
and if you think about referrals in that format, or in that context, you just walk into a room full of salespeople. I'm doing training almost every single day. I walk into a room, raise your hand the last time you asked for a referral. And most people have not asked for a referral. They don't ask. They're afraid to ask. So ask. But that
That's
as
the
we
question.
start moving into volatility, as we start moving into a crisis situation, you're going to have to ask a lot more. And by the way, the secret to getting referrals is really simple. Provide great service, ask. That's it.
That's it. That's absolutely it. Because I mean, let's face it, it's the easiest way to get a very good lead. Okay,
Yeah.
if you're not doing really good service and meeting and exceeding your current client's expectation, you're not going to get a good referral. But if they refer you to one of their vendors, it's putting a feather in their cap too. Because if you knock it out, they're going to tell someone else, and it's the vicious circle. One tells another, another, and another. Why wouldn't they want to do business with you? That's the question. Why wouldn't you want to ask?
Well,
Yep.
I've always said the best salesperson on the planet is your customer.
Yes. Absolutely, no doubt.
Absolutely.
From there.
100%.
Jeff,
Especially when you teach them how to sell for you. So
Yes.
oh,
Without really teaching them, because it's what you do for them
yeah.
that sells it. Period.
awesome there.
Yep.
As we're coming up, we're going to be airing this episode towards like the end of the year, and a lot of sales reps out there. We're talking about the different sides, and some of them might have leaky pipelines. They're looking to get that fixed, as in fanatical prospecting, you say like inaction breeds like doubt and fear. Can you go a little bit more into, if people are not familiar with, hey, what the golden hours are, and kind of like what somebody should do if they have a leaky pipeline?
Good question.
That's a good
So
one.
so I'm gonna challenge you for a second. What do you mean by a leaky pipeline?
So they don't have enough qualified leads. They're probably banking on the hey, call me next year type of prospects or customers, but they've definitely taken a hit on their, whether it be their revenue or their gross profit. So it's not as it's like when you're looking at a pipe, it's leaky. So that means those leads are
It's
falling
like
through the cracks.
when you say leaky, that assumes that there was something in it that was leaking out. So what you're talking about is an empty pipeline, right? A leaky pipeline is what delusional people call an empty pipeline, right? And you can't be delusional and successful at the same time. So,
Right.
so if you got an empty pipeline, what you got to do is you have to have a conversation with more people. You have to talk to people, and just simplifying this, the more people you talk with, the more prospects you're going to have in your pipeline, and and that means Pick up the phone, walk in a door, have a conversation with people. Have a conversation with your customer about who's handling their conveyor belt. Talk with people. So if you're coming up to the end of the year and your pipeline is weak, I would wake up in the morning, I don't know, get up about 5:30 or 6 or so, coffee pot set on automatic. I would go in, get a cup of coffee, I would get back in bed. Next to my bed on the bedside table was a list, and I would pick up my phone and I would dial the list from bed. Now, that did not make for a good marriage, but I didn't pass go. I didn't collect $200. I didn't take a shower. I didn't do anything. The very first thing I did was spend 45 minutes dialing into manufacturing. Then I would go take a shower because I usually set a couple of appointments, and then I would head to the office, and then I would call other industries that may have started later. But if you want to talk to someone in manufacturing and you want to talk to the boss is in their office at 6:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And by 10 o'clock in the morning, the boss is on the floor, and you're not going to talk to them anymore. And I meet salespeople all the time. They're like, I can't get in. I can't get in. I can't get in. I can't get in. And then I'll force them to come in and we'll do a 6 o'clock in the morning call block and their manufacturing clients. And they're stunned that they're having conversations with people. So you want to front load your day with prospecting, then do some other stuff. Then if you're a field level rep, get your ear in the field. And when you go to your appointments, look around all your appointments and then go knock on those doors and then ask for referrals and find out who your customers are doing business with. And you eat, breathe, sleep prospecting every day, every day, every day, every day. And by the way, Ryan, when I left the office and I went out in the field, with me was a list of 100 prospects, many of whom I didn't know a lot about. So during the day, when I had a break, because you always did, there was 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, what have you, I would pick up the phone. I'm going to dial 5 or 10 of them, and I'm just asking for buying windows. I'm looking for decision makers. I'm not necessarily calling them to set an appointment. I'm calling them to gather information to decide whether I want to set an appointment. So all day long, I'm prospecting. So, we're looking for like some magic pill that's going to solve the problem. The number one reason why you're failing is you have an empty pipeline. The reason you have an empty pipeline is you're not prospecting. So if you want a full pipeline, you start prospecting every day, every day, every day, every day. You block the time on your calendar and you make the calls. And by the way, if you're in inside sales, so if that's what you do, then same thing. You've got to have time set aside in your day for outbound, and you're probably going to be getting some inbound as well. So you're going to do outbound, inbound, but you need to have that time set aside. You got to block it and you got to do it. And people are looking for like some secret formula for this. There isn't one. Eat the damn frog, pick up the phone, talk to people. The more people you talk with, the better the fuller your pipeline's going to be.
Now, something you said in there really caught my ear where you said, I might be trying to find out their buying timelines, this and that. Not even necessarily knowing if we're actually going to do business together. That more comes on the qualifying prospect, on the side of prospecting, right? Where you're qualifying prospects to the top tier to make sure that this isn't a wasted venture 3 months down the road. You want
Yeah, well,
long-term prospects.
I've got 8 hours a day that I can sell. So I'm going to sell more if I spend that time with people who are going to buy.
Yeah.
And the people who are going to buy are typically the people that are qualified to buy and have an open buying window. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you call a prospect. It's a company that when you look at it from the outside, all of the facts tell you they're qualified. So they're in your sector, they use your services, they're big enough. So you can look at all of the outside data points and say they're pretty good. When you call them, they say, yeah, we'd love to talk to you, but we're under contract with your competitor. And let's say they've got a contract and that contract's not going to expire for 2 more years. And it's an exclusive contract. And I've worked in a number of industries where you're basically, when you sign a contract, it's exclusive. You're not going to be signing contracts with multiple people. Sometimes you will, but sometimes you won't. So I'm not going to go set a meeting with you to have a conversation. Your contract's done up for 2 more years and it's exclusive. Why would I spend time with you? You can't buy. It doesn't make a difference how good I am. You have a legally binding agreement that says that you are under contract. Now, some salespeople say, well, I could probably talk them out of it. Well, maybe you could, but when your competitor brings the lawyer in, the lawyers for that company are going, we're not getting in a lawsuit over this. Go away. So I'm not spending my time with those folks, but I know if I know their contract X date, that's going to go into my CRM. so that I'm building lists based on upcoming contract X dates if I'm in that type of an industry, so
Hmm.
that as I'm calling, I'm setting appointments with prospects who have an impending contract X date far enough out to give me a timeline in order to close the business, and that's how I'm going to sell more. In some cases, timelines are budgetary. In some cases, timelines are they're going to be based on seasonal demand or something that changes in an industry. You just need to know for an industry or for a sector or for your marketplace what those buying windows look like. What are the patterns that tell you that a buying window is opening? And if you can understand what those look like, then that'll give you a clue about when you should engage and get in. So, about 80% of my prospecting time is focused on identifying buying windows, gathering qualifying information, moving that information into my CRM, and using that information to build a future list so that when I'm dialing for appointments, I'm setting appointments with prospects that have the highest probability of closing within a reasonable time period to keep my income up, right? And to deliver sales so that I'm delivering ROI for my organization.
That's awesome. I love that. Love that.
Mm.
Nice.
Love that. We
I like
see
that.
it
I
a
learned
lot
the
in our
difference.
industry where freight is slowed down and they have all these suppliers they're dealing with. And then you call and they're like, my problem is now I don't have enough freight to keep my regular guys busy.
Yep.
So obviously that buying window is gone. And then you would now start investigating. Well, when do you see it picking back up? At what point would you start looking? Well, I don't know, 6 months from now, we start looking. If we're picking back up, it's our busy season. At least now you know when to go back in to find that buying window.
Well,
I
you're
love that
exactly
philosophy.
right. But you also need to understand the patterns with freight. So, for in some situations, those patterns are going to be seasonal. Depends on
Hmm.
what region they're in, and also if I'm looking into your sector, one of the biggest issues that you're going to be facing is that small carriers have been able to do very, very well over the last 2 years because the freight volumes have been record setting, and with people at home and with people focusing on products versus services, that if you had two trucks, I mean, you were full and you were trying to find more equipment, you couldn't even find more equipment because there wasn't any more equipment to go around.
Mm.
So now as freight starts coming down, then and fuel prices are going up, if you've consistently prospected into, say, small carriers, you may find yourself in a world of hurt because a lot of them aren't going to exist in a year.
Right.
They're either going to get merged in or bought up by bigger carriers, or they're just going to go out of business because the bigger carriers have the ability to hedge fuel cost. They have the ability to scale at a different level. They have the access to equipment so that they can scale up, scale down, and they have the ability to attract the drivers that they need in order to deliver that small organizations can't. So
Hmm.
if you're prospecting into that space right now, you might want to start thinking about building relationships with regional and national carriers and start moving away from mom and pops. I mean, I wouldn't say completely, but you got to watch it because if freight levels continue to drop, and I think that they are, and I think you're going to see a pretty big drop coming into the first quarter, simply because even if you just look at what's happening right now over the holidays, we're just not seeing. It's okay, but it's not like what everybody was expecting. Then there's going to be some problems. I mean, and again, like we're just talking this out loud. One of the positive trends is that fuel costs have been coming down a good bit, enough so that it makes a difference. One of the negative trends is that freight loads are coming down, so the amount of volume and freight volume is coming down. And so you've got both things happening at the same time. But then as you start looking at, the pouring on of more regulations, and there are certain states where that's happening, everything is against the bottom level of the marketplace.
Hmm.
There's going to be a shakeout. It really is going to happen when freight hits a point where you can't keep your drivers busy, you can't keep your equipment rolling. At that point, you're going to be forced to do something, and that may either go out of business or to sell out to a larger carrier. So if we said all that, and we were just sitting around in a sales floor and we said that, I'd be sitting down with the salespeople going, okay, so if we see these as major trends in this particular market segment, if we recognize that, what do we do now?
Mm.
What would Willie Sutton do? Where's the money going? Where's it going to be? w- are there particular carriers that are working in particular industries that it makes sense for us to focus our time and attention on? But where is the market going? And that's sort of the old, the old Wayne Gretzky, saying it's not, you don't go where the puck is, you go where the puck is going. So when you start thinking about prospecting now and think about buying windows, go where the buying windows are going to be, because even with prospecting, there is a little bit of prospecting for now. I don't know if you remember those old candies, now and later's, right? There's now prospecting for right now, but most prospecting is prospecting for later. You're setting yourself up for success. And go back for the last 2 years. What have salespeople been doing? Now, now, now. In some cases, they didn't have any other choice. Like, they're so busy just trying to take care of what they got. They can't focus on the future. But Ryan, to your question, what would you do if you had an empty pipeline? Okay, well, a message is pretty simple. Pick up the damn phone, go talk to people. Walk in a door, go talk to people. That's my answer. But at the same time, start thinking about, what are you going to be selling in March? And what are you going to be selling in July? Where are you going? And start building that pipe for the future. You got to take care of today's income, but you got to build for the future. And I don't know your industry as well as you do, but I'm just using just
But you
basic
know
market
it
trends.
pretty well.
You're a
You
lot
do
better
look
than
through
some
the bank.
people
You
that I've
Well,
look
good.
through the
Okay. Well,
bank.
then I'm just taking some basic trends that are happening. I read a lot. So, and so now I'm thinking, okay, where do I, what do I need to be focused on, and, and why? And if you're a salesperson and you get that, you can easily pivot inside the industry, and it's gonna change, over the next, year or so. But I mean, you hang around in logistics and transportation long enough, you'll understand that the entire industry runs on a regular cycle of abundance and scarcity. It has always been that way. It will always be that way. And you've got to get ahead of the curve and recognize, when are we going down and when are we going up. And if you can get ahead of those curves, you really will never go hungry.
There's two things that come to mind there, Jeb. First, what Dan said about when he was talking about, well, if this is not the time, when will you start looking? That just opened up a door to the next question.
Mhm.
Well, why would you want to look?
Yep.
Right? I
Yeah.
mean, why would you want to look? And then the second thing is with the carriers out there, perfect time, guys, to start solidifying long-term business relationships with your carriers. Because if you take care of them now and feed them, guess
Hmm.
who's going to be in your corner when you really need them? They're going to remember what you did for them to keep them afloat, and they'll be there for you in a pinch. So there's two different selling things. You're prospecting carriers to get them in your corral to make sure they'll be there for the long run, as well as asking those pertinent questions to your prospects when that door opens, when they say, well, we won't start looking for what. Why are you going to look? Why are your service providers not meeting the needs that you need right now? It just
Hmm.
it starts rolling right off the tongue.
Yep.
So two major things right there.
Yeah. Very good points.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Awesome there. And as we're kind of talking about like the sales rep itself, Jeb, can you touch on what sales leaders, so people who run teams, what their kind of outlook, what they should be looking on? Because one of the videos I saw that was really interesting for me was that, if you're a leader, you should really become Teflon. You should be that person who's in the trenches, as Jeff always kind of says, is that, hey, if your team is doing prospecting hours, get out of your office. Come out there with them
Oh,
and bang those phone calls with them. Lead by example. As you're like we said with your book coming out, any kind of tips for sales leaders specifically?
yeah, there's nothing more powerful than being a sales leader and just walking out and grabbing the phone and saying, "Give me half your list." I do this all the time with sales teams. So, I work with teams across industries, and I'll say, "Just give me half your list," and I'll sit down next to them and bang out calls. And sometimes it's just awful because I don't know their industry and I don't know the objections, and so I just get hammered. And every once in a while I'll sell something. Like, every once in a while I get somebody on the hook and they're hot and they want to buy from me. And I'm screaming, I need help. I don't know what the hell I'm selling. But
Yeah.
but the salespeople don't see that I'm sitting next to them and I'm crashing and burning. They just see that I'm sitting next to them. And they
Right.
think it's the coolest thing in the world that I'm willing to put myself out there and make calls with them. And and sometimes I'll do it to leaders. Like, I went to a software company, and the leaders are all sitting in their offices. So I went and got half a list, and I sat in the office of the vice president of sales and made dials and it took him about 20 minutes to get a clue. He said, "Give me some of that." And I shamed the sales, the VP of sales into dialing. If I'm the sales guru and I'm willing to come in and do it, you can do it. I mean, you're the sales VP. So I think there's real power in that. What I mean
love
by
that.
Teflon, by the way, is that especially as you start moving into a crisis, and especially as things start going south, and we get a lot more bad news, and people start losing deals for no particular reason other than the company just decided they're going to cut things. As a leader, you're going to get a massive amount of excuses. Here's the excuse why I can't do this. Here's the excuse why my pipeline is empty. And it's not really empty, boss. It's leaking. Like I had stuff in there. It just leaked out, right? So if you could give me some tape, maybe I could tape up the holes. So you're going to get all these excuses. And what leaders who are Teflon are like is that no excuse, nothing they get from their salespeople sticks. We're going to prospect. We're going to fill up the pipeline. And the best leaders say, yep, you're right. Things are awful. We're still going to pick up the phone. Let's go. And they do it because they love their people. They love their salespeople. I'm doing this. I know it's hard. I know you don't want to do this, but I'm doing it because I love you. I love you. I love your family. And I know that if you do these things with me, that you're going to have your goals and your dreams come true, that you're going to make a lot of money, that you're going to be able to do the things that you want to with your family. But if you don't do these things, you are going to starve to death. You're going to have skinny kids. So I'm doing this because I want the best for you. That's what the best sales leaders do. Now, along with that, right now, sales leaders, going back to the basics, need to be getting into the trenches with their salespeople. They need to get real about how things were, and that salespeople have really had it easy over the last couple of years. They need to start preparing their team to work the system, to follow the sales process, to do the things, take the steps that we know consistently work. And then they need to start drilling those basics in. You can't assume that just because you say we need to get back to the basics that all the salespeople are going to get back to the basics. This is a skills position. So you need to start running drills. You need to start practicing them. You need to start role playing with them. You need to start having meetings where you train them. You need to remind them of what professional selling is. And you need to do that consistently, because the more you repeat the message, the more people are going to believe the message. But as a sales leader, you can't go sit in your office and in hope and wish that things are going to get right. And you certainly can't hope and wish the pipeline's going to get right. And if you try to manage and run a remote sales team via email, you fail. You're just going to have a mediocre team. So that's what I mean.
Yeah, there's
Only
a
the self-motivated and the ones that actually want to go somewhere are the ones that are going to go somewhere, and the ones that don't will probably end up going somewhere else.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
In the end.
and then you've got the people in the middle. So you're going to have the people that you've got superstars on your team. You just have to keep them close. What's happening right now is, we were talking about this earlier, on inside sales teams that got dispersed. Some of the veterans that were really, really good have kind of lost their mojo. And it's not because they quit being good. It's just because they grew up in a world where everybody was holding everybody else accountable, and they thrived in that environment where, if Dan's sitting next to me and he just made a sell, then I'm going to outdo him. So they've missed that. But if you think about it, basically what you said, Dan, you got people that are not going to make it. They were the people who they could fog a mirror, and when the calls were coming in, and you didn't, you had like, for example, let's just say that you're brokering freight, you had more freight than there were trucks to move it. I mean, like, you didn't have to work that hard. It's like it was coming to you.
Mhm.
On the flip side of that, if you're in a situation where you were, well, let's say that again. If you were in a situation where you were already good and you've been good and you were at the top of your game, then you're going to be at the top of your game coming out of this. There's a set of superstars, savants, people that are just awesome at this. They're always going to be good. The people that were fogging a mirror, they're going to go away. There's no way that you're going to turn turkeys into eagles. The problem is in the middle, right? You've got a whole bunch of people in the middle that have the potential to be superstars, that have the potential to do very, very well inside of a recession, inside of a downturn. But if they don't have a good leader who's coaching them, who is getting in the trenches with them, who's providing training and role playing and working with them and showing them how and patting them on the back and keeping them going, picking them back up when things go wrong, then you might lose those people too. And if you're a leader and you lose that middle group, you're toast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a term that I've always used. It's so much easier to keep a client on board than trying to find a replacement client, because it's so cost ineffective. I mean, it costs you so much money to replace that one. So in a time of crisis, especially right now with the recession blooming out there, pay more attention on the clients that you have. Feed them, keep them well oiled, because once you take your foot off the gas pedal, that's when they're going to fall by the wayside, and then you're going to have a very difficult time trying to replace them, and it's going to be very costly.
It's true. And the thing about it, especially during a downturn, if you can flex to the customers you have and hold on to them long term, when you come out on the other side, you can upsell, you can add on, you can raise prices, you can do all those things. You can't make money with a customer that you don't have. By
Mm.
the way, same thing, Jeff, is true with your top salespeople. If when you get into this downturn and things start going south, if you're a leader that shows up and you're there for your people, and you invest in them, they're going to stick with you. If you're not, they may go someplace else, and it's
Mhm.
really, 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 really hard to replace great salespeople once you lose them.
True.
Yes.
Yep.
And unfortunately, a lot of companies start pulling back from sales training and advancing their team in times like this.
Yeah.
When
That's true.
it's really when they should double down, triple down on it, because the ones that are hungry to get better, to do more, be more, achieve more, are the ones that when they come out of it, their company's going to be 10 times stronger, 100 times
Yes,
stronger.
And
absolutely.
you'll be right there along with the ride, man. That's where you want to be.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
exactly where you
Hmm.
want to be.
Hmm.
Well, I think like team culture, it's more than pizza parties, right? It's more about actually investing in them, and from there. And I know we're getting close to wrap up, but I just got one more question for you, Jeb. I know the other guys probably do too. But for a well-oiled sales machine team that you've seen and you've trained, what are some traits that they show, not before, but becoming that successful, essentially?
Well, if you think about a well-oiled sales organization, it really pivots around the leader. So you'll always see you have great sales leaders. And by the way, you have great sales leaders that the people in the team will run through a wall for. So sales is difficult. And I've worked for some great leaders in sales, and they ask you to do difficult things. If you've got a good leader, the salespeople they'll suck it up and they'll go do those difficult things for the leader. So everything begins there. The leader's not the most important person on the team. The salespeople are, and the leader gets that, but they understand that everything begins with the leader. Second thing is they have a sales system that they run, and they run those plays consistently. And by the way, that's no different than a great sports team. A great sports team has a playbook, and they run the playbook. And by the way, along with running the playbook, everybody does their job. So your job is to do this. This is what you do.
Okay.
And inside of that, people like each other. Now, some of the sales teams I've worked on, it was insanely competitive. Like I'm telling you, we would take each other's legs out
Mhm.
to get ahead on the ranking report, but we all liked each other. One of my teams that I worked on, it was like a dream team. It was some of the best salespeople ever. I had a sales manager that was able to cobble together an entire team of superstars, and we were able to be together for about 2 years. And then there's only so long you can keep a group of superstars together before they start getting poached by other companies. So we're all still friends. This has been like 25 years, and we're all still friends. A couple of them are CEOs, are running companies. They're really smart people, but we really liked each other. So you've got a team of people who like each other. You've got a leader who people respect and they'll do anything for. You have a system that you consistently run, and then you have an expectation that everybody's going to operate at high performance, and mediocre is not accepted. So the leaders the leader in the organization, the leaders in the organization are relentless about eliminating mediocrity wherever they find it. They do not tiptoe around feelings. We call them eggshell salespeople, right? They don't tiptoe around eggshell salespeople, because in the moment that you do that, you begin to accept mediocrity. So everybody's held accountable at a really high level, and there's just an expectation of high performance. And when you put those things together, there's some other formulas that go into building a high performing, well-oiled machine, but those are the basic building blocks. And by the way, there's not an app in there for that. I mean, there's no technology for that.
Yeah.
That's just good human beings doing good human being things.
I love it.
Awesome.
I love it, Jeb. Thank you so much for being here, my friend. This has been a long time coming, and one of my desires coming true. And thank you to Andrea Waltz for connecting us again. Go for No, her and Richard Fenton, great people. Awesome for you to be here and take out the time,
Thank you.
especially because we're double the time we originally agreed to. So thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate
So
that.
much.
Thank you
Thank
very
y'all, and make sure that you go get Selling in a Crisis, brand new book.
Got it.
Awesome.
I love it. And then I saw Audible just actually sent me an email the other day that there's another book that you have coming out. Do you have another book coming out soon?
I'll have another book coming out this year. It'll be the Fanatical Prospecting Playbook, and I'll have a book a year out for the next 5 years or so. This book was, when we wrote this book, I didn't mean to write. I mean, this book wasn't on the docket. I was supposed to, the Fanatical Prospecting Playbook, but in July, looking at the winds of change, we decided to load this book up first.
It's a great book. Love it. Love it. Love it.
That's it.
Thank you.
All right, Ryan, you want to take us out of here?
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for coming out. Jeb, this is a dream of mine. You're definitely one of my favorite guests, and like I said, you've literally changed my life. So thank you for that, sir. And it's crazy because you're in Atlanta, I'm in Toronto, so you just never think of how things will happen.
There you
But
go.
It's
wanna
this.
thank-
It's the
Exactly.
power
It's
of
inked.
delivering a message. to
It's
help.
inked.
it's like it's
on
it's
paper.
everything like that. So want to thank everybody for coming out. We'll see you guys on the replay at 12 and 3 p.m. Eastern time on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We're looking forward to seeing you guys here tomorrow again. And if you like this, if you found value in this, if you're a new viewer or you're been a seasoned watcher, please share this with somebody, because there's tons of nuggets in here that can propel your business forward for you. All right, thank you,
I wanna
everybody.
see-